Great. Good evening. It is now 7 o'clock, just a couple minutes past, but I'd like to call the meeting to order. Will the Secretary please read the roll?
Julie Kay. Dan McCarthy.
Here.
Commissioner Wegley.
Here.
Commissioner Marzen.
Here.
Commissioner DeBoer.
Here.
Commissioner Dill. Chair O'Connor. I think we need to start out. Rick,
What?
have we received a formal resignation?
No, we have not.
We have not.
Nope.
So we need to elect a vice chair. We just go straight to.
Should we do that?
So no, it goes right to,
Ed. Okay,
as
so
the vice chair, Commissioner Marzen would then chair this meeting.
Okay.
so no vote is
No votes.
necessary.
Okay, fine. With a quorum tonight, the first order of business is to approve the prior meeting minutes from the July 18th, 2019 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from July?
So moved.
Second? Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. Secretary, would you call the roll?
Commissioner McCarthy,
Present. Yes.
Commissioner.
Wrong answer.
Well,
Yes.
were you in attendance at the July meeting?
I was.
Okay, you can vote yes then.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Wegley,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBoer,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Marzen.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Vote passes 4 yes.
I'll let it pass right now. Okay, with the quorum of the commission present, we'll move on to the public hearing portion of the meeting. Tonight, we'll be hearing about the master plan for the Western Growth Area. Before we get started, the general order of the meeting will be as follows. I will swear in those who might give testimony regarding the application. Second, I will ask the staff to provide proof of notice, introduce the application, and provide a summary of the request. Next, the village consultant will then make their presentation to all of us. After that, the Plan Commission will then ask questions of the consultant. Following our questions with the consultant, the audience will have an opportunity to present their questions. And I like to do that as a bunch, as a group, and then we'll address all the questions at once and not go back and forth with questions and responses, and try to keep this simple and hopefully go a little quicker. And after the public, all the questions are answered, we will actually conclude this public hearing to a date certain.
Continue.
We continue to a date certain. We're not going to vote on this tonight formally. We're going to continue it to another date. So this is just a presentation for everybody. And this will give time for the staff and the members of the board to consider everything and then get back with our consultant and Lauren on all the details. So now I will open the public hearing portion. And I guess the first thing would be to swear in the people that are...
May I suggest we actually move that until after the presentation from the consultant, because at that time, maybe more of the public might have an
Sure.
idea as to whether or not they have questions.
All right, John, then
or
you have the...
input. So I can introduce the application
Okay.
and our consultant. So this is Plan Commission Application 2019-03, which is a proposed amendment to Chapter 1222, the official village comprehensive plan of the Village Code, to revise the comprehensive plan adopted December 7th, 2009, and to incorporate the Western Growth Area Master Plan as an official document as part of that plan. This public hearing was duly advertised on October 31st, 2019 in the Regional, and on November 5th, 2019 in the Daily Southtown. With the recent annexation of Cog Hill, Glen Eagles, Mid-Iron Golf Club, and the Ludwig Farms, it is anticipated that the village will begin to experience development pressure within the foreseeable future. The village's comprehensive plan, which is just a land use plan that identifies appropriate land uses for future development within the village and guides future decision-making, addresses the recently annexed Western Growth Area as a future study area, but does not identify any land use designations or guide decision-makers in what type of development should occur in the area. The village should have a land use plan to help guide both decision-makers and developers prior to consideration of any development proposal. And given that, the village entered into a contract for service with Houseo Levine Associates to develop a comprehensive plan for this area. And Mr. John Houseo with Houseo Levine Associates is here tonight to present the first draft for public hearing tonight.
Back a little bit so my back's not to anybody. And then we can maybe see a little bit better. That's okay with the plan commission. Everybody see okay? So again, as Lauren said, my name is John Houseo with Houseo Levine Associates. And I think before we get started with the presentation, it's worth noting that I've been working with this community for, was it Maria, more than 20 years? I still remember how long I've been working.
John, sorry to interrupt. You're off camera right now.
Oh, I need to go further over?
Yeah.
Sorry, residents, I had to go this way.
Well,
Tell me when I can stop.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going. Keep going. You're good.
I don't mind being off camera.
Maybe you could just turn, if you
Yeah,
could
I'll try to
turn
turn it
over.
like this. But I've been working with the village on planning and zoning and development related matters for just over 20 years. Lauren mentioned the previous comprehensive plan. I was the project director for that. That was adopted in 2009. It was 10 years old. So this evening we're here to present a working draft, and it's not being adopted this evening, a working draft of the Western Growth Area Master Plan, which will be an addendum to the village's comprehensive plan this evening for discussion and questions. Think of it more as an introduction and an orientation to the working draft than anything else. So with that, I'm going to go through it. I have a number of slides. I'll go through them fairly quickly, and we can, as acting chairman said, Marcy, we can go through and address anything, any questions later. So again, this is just up here. We weren't sure who else was going to be here. So the mayor, Rick and Lauren, we've worked with staff extensively over the last several months. And then again, that's me, John Houseo, with the principal Houseo. A little bit of background and overview for the study. The Western Growth Area includes just under 1,500 acres of land annexed into the village in 2016 when it was brought into Palos Park. There are several large tracts of land under single ownership each, not under one ownership, each one under different ownership. And it's Cog Hill, Mid-Iron, Glen Eagle, and Ludwig Farms. And this is really a unique opportunity in the Chicago region for a community to have this much area come into the community at one shot, and then be in a position to say, this area is going to have pressure for development over the next several decades. How do we want to begin to inform decision-making and put something into place to help out along the way as individual proposed developments are proposed and brought forth. This is not a development plan. We're not proposing buildings. We're not proposing new development. This is a plan to help guide the village when development is proposed, to help that process. So the master plan, a comprehensive plan, establishes the Palos Park community's vision for the Western Growth Area. There's a vision in your comprehensive plan as well. It sets an expectation as to the type of housing and commercial development and high quality character that is anticipated when this area does develop. This is not set in stone. A comprehensive plan is a framework. The best way to think about it is that it is a foundation for decision making. It is not regulatory. It doesn't dictate what development has to be like. It does not predict and say this is what kind of development or housing or commercial has to come out of the ground. It's meant to provide a foundation so in the future residents, developers, staff, the Plan Commission, and the village board can all have something to help inform the decisions that they make regarding development proposals that are brought forth by property owners. We don't know what those are at this point. The master plan is in addition to the 2009 comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan governs all areas of the city in terms of land use policy and sort of, again, that foundation for decision making. It identifies regulatory updates that need to be made. Some recommendations in the plan may require that zoning amendments or the PUD process be amended over time. Development proposals will continue to be properly vetted the village through the public-facing PUD process. So even if this plan gets approved as it is or gets revised a little bit, that does not in and of itself approve any development. Any development in this area that would come forward would be required to have a public notice. Residents would be notified. There would be a public hearing in front of the Plan Commission with resident testimony. The developer will propose something. After that, the recommendation would then go on to the village board for consideration and adoption, revision, approval, rejection, whatever they wanted to do. But again, this is just the plan. Any development, I'll just say that again, any development that would be proposed in the future would require a public hearing, would require approval as a planned unit development, and would require noticing residents in a public hearing. So this doesn't approve any development. And then the master plan will ensure proper planning so that the new growth does not place a burden on existing village services. We wanted to make sure that as this area receives pressure for development over time, that it was in keeping with the character and values of Palos Park, and that it does not put an undue economic burden or service burden or transportation burden on the village as it grows. So some of the core principles of development, the first thing we did was we set up 5 core principles. This is all online on the village's website, the draft plan, you can take a look at it. As is all the materials we prepared over the last year in preparation for this. We have boards and exhibits, we have market research, we had an open house, we had a conversation hub, and we're both heavily attended by residents at all of those sessions. But there are 5 fundamental principles: the environment, the quality of development, the economics of the development, connectivity of the area within the development and the surrounding area, and then the overall character of the development that will be proposed in the future. And these are the 5 things we focused on before we even started developing a plan. These are sort of the values that we thought were most important to build the plan around. So the natural setting is a hallmark of the community. About 60% of Palos Park is forest preserve. It's beautiful, it's wooded, it's got great ecological and environmental assets, and it's really the hallmark of the community. There's proximity to parks, to the forest preserve, and we need to draw on these as amenities to any development that may take place, and to herald these as key components and features of any development that may be proposed in the future. We want to make sure that we integrate open space and environmental features, natural ecosystems into any development that might be proposed to continue that tradition of being good stewards of the national environment. So this is a key component of anything that may be developed in the future. They've got to demonstrate that they're paying homage to this important feature. Next is the overall quality of the development. Development in Palos Park is a very high standard. Design, materials, construction, the overall appearance. This isn't slapstick, cookie cutter stuff. It should not be. The village has a great reputation and history of quality. We want this to be the same thing. It needs to be heavily landscaped and attractive for pedestrians in the environment. Use of natural building materials. This is not going to be a bastion for contemporary development or architecture. This will be fairly traditional. Active with very minimal lighting. We don't want to light up the sky. We want to keep it very dark like it is now. And contribute to quality public services and facilities. So quality is a big component of this. Development should result in a net fiscal benefit to the village. We don't want to have development that over time will put an undue economic burden on the village. It is a mix of residential that we propose, a mix of open space, a mix of commercial in key locations, the potential for an office park. It is that mix of uses that will over time ensure that this is a revenue net gain or a revenue neutral. We want to make sure this is not a fiscal detriment to the village. Decision making should consider and respond to market realities, and newly annexed areas should strengthen the village's overall economic position. Carefully weigh and evaluate new development to avoid needless additional tax burdens on residents, existing or future residents. Development should not financially strain the village in its provisions of services, facilities, or infrastructure. So again, this can't be development at the cost of existing residents or the village's ability to maintain services and facilities. It needs to augment those going forward. Connectivity is a big deal. We don't want this development to be an isolated series of isolated development pockets. We want this to be as connected as possible. So new development should result in a series of not isolated clusters, but instead result in well-connected trails, paths, sidewalks, and roadways. Walkability and bikeability should be a litmus test for any development that is proposed. Is it easy for people to walk around and bike around any new development that is proposed within the development and connected to the larger area? We want to make sure it should be interconnected with the greatest extent possible, allowing all residents and visitors to come and go easily, and prioritize development and connections to the Cal-Sag Trail and the regional trail system that exists nearby this area. In the overall character, with respect to the sense of place, it should integrate well with the existing character. There is a character to Palos Park when you drive around that is unique to any place else in the region. If you came here or blindfolded and brought here and opened your eyes, you might think you were in the rolling hills of Kentucky or Tennessee or someplace like that. You would not think you were this close to where you were in the Chicago regional area. The rolling hills, the open ditches, the ravines, the creeks, it's really beautiful. And that's because the village, as it's grown, has prioritized keeping of those natural topography and environmental features. We're proposing that cluster forms of development can enable amenities in small areas while reserving large areas for open space and natural amenities. The character and charm of Palos Park must be safeguarded to the extent new areas through adherence to these core principles. So we're proposing uses here and different types of product here that don't exist to the same extent elsewhere in the village. So this will be different in this older part of the village. It's not going to all be homes on single-family homes nestled in the woods. It's a different type of environment over there. It's a lot, again, the golf courses are large open spaces with some mature trees, but not the same sort of wooded nature as the east side of the village, the older part. So it'll be different, but needs to reflect the environment, the core values, the quality, and design. So first, we're going to take a look at a market overview. We did a detailed market study. It's an economic fiscal modeling that was done by my firm. And if need be, at the next meeting, follow up, and whenever the next meeting is, if we need to, we can bring our market analyst here to answer the questions related to the market, if there are any. So I'll go through this quickly. We looked at the residential market real quickly, did a deep dive to find out what the market was now and going forward. And within the residential market area, what they call the RMA, the demand for higher value homes, $450,000 and more, there's a need for that, a gap in the market. And for homes that are on the more affordable side, $150,000 and below, there's a gap in the market. The market in between those 2 points, there's a decent amount of housing in the market. The 10 municipalities that we looked at were Hickory Hills, Homer Glen, Lamont, Orland Hills, Orland Park, Palos Hills, Palos Heights, Palos Park, Tinley Park, and Willow Springs for the market area. Renter-occupied housing, same sort of thing. You'll see that in the higher income levels, there is enough. There's not enough in the lower income levels for rent prices. There's a need, but in that ballpark area where those light green are lines that go up, that means there's enough in the market. It's the dark green at the higher end and the dark green at the lower end where there's a current gap right now, 2016, a gap in the market that can be filled by more of this product. That's not talking about even future demand, that's right now. Residential market area, of which Palos Park is a part, there's a significant demand for additional housing with projected demand of about 2,300 new homes by 2040 in the market area we just talked about. Rental rates are increasing along with occupancy rates. It's a very desirable part of the region. So rental rates are increasing and occupancy is increasing, meaning vacancies are decreasing. It's big demand. For both owners and renters, there's a need for more affordable housing. This is true everywhere in the United States. But here you have a market for both the more expensive as well as the more affordable, both ends of the spectrum. Housing analysts forecast a need for higher value units as well. And an aging population represents a real high potential for senior housing and senior units and senior focused dwellings in the future. That's just a demand that is increasing over time. And if you look at that baby boomer bubble, and look at the number of people every day or every hour that are going into retirement, projected out over the next few decades, that senior need is going to be continuing to increase. We look at the retail market as well. The retail rents in Palos Park are higher than on the region, the average, and tend to vary more from year to year. Except for a blip in 2013, vacancy rates are pretty low. So you can see here, Palos Park, so about the same, up a little bit, about the same, little blip down to 2013, and then up. So 2013 there's a little blip down, but that was it. So pretty strong low vacancy rates and pretty high rental demand. In the study area, new retail development will primarily follow and support new housing within the growth area. While there appears to be retail surplus in the larger market area, the primary market demonstrates potential for new neighborhood-oriented type development corridor type development. And right now, there's a demand for retail of a range between about 60,000 and 116,000 square feet. Not in the future with new population, that's right now. So if more people move in and development takes place, that demand for retail is lower. We looked at office as well because there's some potential for office development out here. The plan calls out for commercial. That could be office, that could be personal service, it could be professional service, it could be retail. It's likely going to be a mix. So we looked at office as well. Right now, in Palos Park have decreased slightly. Rents have decreased slightly. The highest was in 2016. The village has averaged far lower vacancies than the rest of the region. Again, the office market here is stronger than it is in the larger region that we look at. As a result of low vacancies, again, office space is pretty well tenanted. Rents have substantially increased because demand remains and has been high. Future development is more viable or variable than the retail market. Office demand analysis shows that the study area could potentially add 25,000 square feet of office inventory in just the next 5 years, even if there isn't a big influx in residential development. We looked at the industrial market as well. There is no industrial property now proposed as part of the plan, as some of the boundaries have shifted. But industrial rents right now in the Chicago region, you can see they're a little bit stronger now in this area than the rest of the region. And vacancies in the market have decreased. But again, there's no industrial. We looked at all these uses. There is no industrial use designated in the plan. And again, this just goes back to the industrial market. There's over 6 million square feet of industrial space has been added just from 2016 to 2017 in the Chicago metro area. It's a huge, huge, huge area. Bottom line is right now in this immediate area, there's really only need for about 25,000 square feet right now of industrial, which is basically one medium-sized building and one small-sized building, because of how much has been built. Look at Lockport up and down 355, how much distribution facility stuff has been built over there on either side, between 143rd and all the way down to 163rd. But again, there's no industrial uses proposed. So next I'm going to go through the approaches to land use and development. So this is the area of the study here right now. Again, it's Cog Hill, it is Glen Eagle, it is Mid-Iron and Ludwig Farm. So we want to provide a diverse mix of housing types. There's some single family, large lot, small lot. There could be some single family attached townhomes, row houses, duplexes, things like that. There could be senior villas. There could be mixed use. There could be some condominiums. There could be, we anticipate a mix of product, not just one thing in every place. Using clustering or conservation design, the idea behind conservation design is, let's say this is just a theoretical example. You have 100 acres, and instead of doing 100 1-acre properties, so you have every single inch of that 100 acres developed, you have those 100 homes on 40 acres, and then you have 60 acres vacant common open space with trails and bike paths and wetlands and ponds and riparian areas and prairies. So the development is on a fraction of the space, not development on every inch of that space. That's the notion of cluster development. We want to try to attract the next generation of residents, provide a wide range of housing options for millennials, young families coming into the area that may want a different type of lifestyle or product. We also want to meet the needs of the other end of the spectrum, which is seniors. And right now, when it comes to seniors, both lifestyle and housing, habits, expenditures, the habits of 24-year-olds are beginning to look a lot more like 74-year-olds. And for the first time, a lot of these things are beginning to blend over a little bit, both in terms of what they're looking for, in terms of rental versus owner, being able to walk and bike versus having to drive, wanting to spend their money on experiences and being outside and doing stuff as opposed to owning a bunch more. But we're beginning to see those two ends of the spectrum, young professionals coming into the area and the older folks leaving their homes wanting a lot of the same sorts of amenities and lifestyle choices. And it's changing things rapidly because those two ends of the spectrum are beginning to merge. We want to make sure that nearby residents have access to parks, that we can accommodate the provision of senior development here if it's proposed. So look at a couple of these areas. That orangish color that you see, we call that mixed residential. And we're calling that mixed residential in the plan because we expect it to be a variety of product. We don't know what that's going to be because the developer hasn't proposed anything yet. Some developers will come in and propose single-family detached homes. That's going to be standard. Some may come in and say, we want to have a cluster home. We want to have an area next to this wetland and next to this big wooded area. So we're going to take these homes and sort of cluster them up so we can keep all that naturalized. We would expect to see some senior housing, maybe some condominiums, some cluster homes, some townhomes, some villas, things like that. So we expect a mix of residential product over the entire area, not one thing over all the area. And we expect that to come forward. So you may very well get, again, you may get single-family homes. And again, these aren't being proposed. We're just trying to capture a sense of what some development product might be. We don't know. So single-family detached homes, the large picture. You've got some ones in the upper right that are closer together rather than being on big lots because there's much more common space and open space next to these smaller lots with the big homes. Then you can see an example in the lower right-hand corner of what a row house or a townhouse product might be. So instead of 4 single-family detached homes, you've got one building with 4 homes in it, preserving more area for open space. So we don't know the product. We would anticipate this area accommodating a variety of residential. So these are sort of zero lot line cottage type villas, and you've got apartments, and you've got single-family attachment apartments as well. So this is what multifamily could look like here. But again, the idea is if these sorts of products are proposed, it's not proposed everywhere, it's proposed in one area so that you can reserve more of the balance to not be developed. Residential framework, again, in the area that's labeled A, let's see if this is the laser pointer here. So this is existing single family, detached, and we've identified that as remaining all single family. We're not changing any of that. This area where it says B right up here is causing sort of golf resort orientation. These would likely be homes or villas fronting on the fairways, fronting along the golf course. People who are looking for not to be maybe in a wooded area, but to be in a golf course, sort of resort, golf resort sort of a setting. Again, different product. And then we've got C over here. This would be more akin to some of the residential that might be a little bit more oriented toward the commercial, because we have commercial development proposed along Archer at this location. So this development out in here would have to have residential behind it. Right now, this is all golf course. But we know going forward this will likely come offline. We've also identified again, so here's some of that commercial area, or not, commercial is here. This is residential, but it's residential behind the commercial. We also identified here, again, this is Glen Eagle. This is Ludwig Farm. Mid-Iron is not residential, and going forward, do we anticipate these two having strong connections throughout, and these being some sort of mix of residential product as well. The other thing we want to talk about is conservation design, and so, excuse me, go back. E is conservation design. Now, we expect conservation design to be used whenever development is done. And that is that development is done in a manner where mature trees and heavily wooded canopies are protected, riparian areas, wetlands are protected, all the things that make this unique and desirable, development works around these areas as opposed to getting rid of these areas. So one of the things that we've done is show you an example of, we would expect this to be a very sensitive area, could be beautiful, could be developed very, very well with conservation design, maintaining all the environmental features that some might view as an encumbrance, but leveraging those as assets going forward. This is an example when I talk about conservation design, this is what I'm talking about. This is just an example. But you can see here, if this is the area in question, as opposed to coming in, putting in a loop road, and dividing up the whole thing so everybody has a large lot and a house, so the whole thing is developed. You come in with the same number of units, and you put it on smaller lots with less infrastructure, and then you reserve, in this case, it's more than 60% of the area is common open space, with bike trails, walking trails, riparian areas, wooded areas, and you don't go into these areas. So there's examples of this throughout the Chicago regional area. Here's an example of one. And there's some out in Geneva, there's some up north. There are areas where they come in here, rather than just coming into a typical development, they do this and put trails and keep all the wooded, the water, the wetlands, and make this amenity for everybody. So everybody has direct access to open space, as opposed to just parceling out the whole thing. And again, we're not recommending this site plan, we're just saying, here's an example of somebody's interpretation of conservation design. Residential framework plan also identifies and describes different types of housing types. And again, we don't know what will be proposed. We expect it to be a lot of different things. So we've classified them as single-family estate, traditional single-family, which is sort of the smaller lots, patio homes, row homes and townhomes, cottage homes, and multifamily. For illustrative purpose, we've shown examples of what these could be. So single-family estates, somewhere in the density of 0.5 to 2 units per acre. So that means you're talking about anywhere from a 2-acre piece of property to a half-acre piece of property. Somewhere in that ballpark for the bigger single-family homes. traditional single-family detached homes against detached homes, anywhere to 2 to 5 units per acre. So you're looking at anywhere from about a 2,200 or 22,000 square foot property all the way down to like a 10,000 square foot property. Units on the estate homes would be about 4,000 square feet plus, big homes. The size of the traditional single family would be about 2,100 to 3,300. Patio homes are homes that would have more than one unit in them. You can see this is actually a 2-unit structure. So we're talking a total density of about 3 to 7 units per acre, and 1,300 to 2,200 square feet per unit. But it's a different type of product that doesn't exist. And we're imagining it's, again, nestled along the golf course or in the woods. When you drive by this area, because of the way they're set up right now, you likely would have very limited view to any of this from the major roads. Townhouses and row homes, typical densities, 5 to 8 units per acre. Approximate unit size, 1,600 to 2,000 square feet. Cottage homes, those are still those clustered homes, 4 to 7 units per acre, 1,300 to 2,700 square feet. And then multifamily, anywhere from like 8 to 12 units per acre, and those could be anywhere from 800 to say like a senior to 1,600 square foot. So a lot of these are still pretty good size, given this market, pretty high quality, pretty good price points. But this is the range of product we would expect to see a mix of nestled into the area. The commercial framework really focuses on a few different things, creating quality shopping plazas with outdoor dining areas and public spaces. We want to keep these high amenities for residents, keep it very pedestrian oriented. There's a few different spaces that we have talked about. One is right here in the middle. This is where the existing clubhouse is. We'd expect this to be sort of a pedestrian oriented, resort style shopping, dining, entertainment area. We then have the area down on Archer and an area down right here where Mid-Iron is right now on Wolf Road. Excuse me, Bell Road. So provide opportunities for new types of commercial, retail, restaurant, service, and office use, picking up visibility on the major corridors, Archer and Bell, and a much more of a destination-oriented one in the middle of like a golf course resort national destination, where you might go there, have a real nice meal, go to a day spa, do some shopping and some nice galleries, whatever, but a real nice thing that would be open to everybody. So kind of a unique little area in there. So again, these are the different areas. Archer Avenue is the first one. These would be more corridor commercial, oriented toward traffic on Archer. We're then talking about Mid-Iron, B over here on Bell Road. This is a substantial sized piece of property. The common easement runs along its western edge, dividing it from Glen Eagle. We would want to see connections through there for bikes or pedestrians or golf carts or whatever to accommodate this development here. But this could be a mix of a whole host of different sorts of office, retail, restaurant, could be medical, could be research, could be a whole bunch of commercial uses in Mid-Iron. Sort of here's like a retail center that we're actually sitting somewhere like on Mid-Iron right now. And as attractive as the Mid-Iron is now, as you drive by it, this might be a little bit nicer to see as you go by. We would expect something like this. Different types of really attractive commercial retail centers, picking up the new residential population in the western area, picking up on all the vehicular traffic that's traveling on these major roadways, and as well as being a destination for Palos Park and the surrounding region. We also take a look at this sort of the golf course resort or town center in this area. It's an area that comes up north of Archer, includes an area up near where Cog Hill is now and their existing clubhouses. And again, this would be pedestrian oriented, sort of like a little town center on Main Street, real high-end shops. If Cog Hill explores the notion, which is what we've been, they've indicated, making it, a national golf resort destination where you might go there with your business colleagues or your family for a week, stay at a nice boutique hotel or a villa, have day spas, have restaurants, have shopping, have a lot of different activities you could do, which would be open to everybody in the surrounding region. We would expect that to be something along the lines of these sorts of types of developments in the middle of that destination-oriented, right in the middle of where Cog Hill is. But a real nice pedestrian-oriented town hall or town square sort of approach. And that's the commercial we envision in the middle. The other one is this idea of a business park up here in this corner. Again, it's sort of anchored in the corner by Archer on the northwestern edge, and the common easement that runs right up, separating it from everything else. And this is a chance that we have. It could be residential. We think it's a great location for a potential office park. Office parks can be very, very good use to have in a campus-like setting, heavy landscaping. You have employees coming in, it's not industrial, it's a business park, much more benign sorts of uses or impacts. And we would expect that being something along the lines of office buildings, a business park, heavily landscaped. It would fit very well into this area and add to the tax base and employment base of the region. Also serve as an employment destination and hub that would help then support the new commercial activity that would take place in the area. Parks and open space is a big part of this as well. We want to go and expand access to all the existing and new recreational areas. We want to make sure that anything out here connects to a comprehensive trail system. We want any development here, whether it's on Cog Hill, Glen Eagle, Ludwig Farm, or Mid-Iron, to all be interconnected with bike trails and walking trails. So regardless of which area you may be visiting or living in, you can easily get to any other area very conveniently as a pedestrian or cyclist. We also want to make sure that this area connects as well as possible to the CalSAC Trail and the regional waterways and the regional bike trail system. So you can see there, support the dedication of 10 acres of parkland for every 1,000 residents. That's sort of a national standard for parkland dedication. Good goal. Few communities have that. The other thing is to sort of preserve a major tree canopy. We've done some redesign of some golf courses across the country. And one of the challenging things is designing these and maintaining those mature trees, because if you go out there, they're gorgeous. They're huge, they're big. They're the type of tree that you got to sort of hug like that. Stunning canopies. These are the things residents, regardless of the product, want to have in and near their neighborhoods. So to the extent possible, we want tree canopy preservation no matter what development is proposed where. That's going to drive a lot of the conservation design necessity. Natural landscape buffers here is about the north side of the area. That's the existing industrial north of Cog Hill. But you can see how extensive that naturalized landscaping area is. We want to keep that as naturalized perimeter landscaping. Like I said, when you drive on the perimeter roads around this, much of the way it's landscaped now, you can't see into the site. And we think that needs to stay that way to the extent possible. We think that's crucial. And again, here's an example of the area we think is important for conservation design that I showed on the previous maps. So these are heavily wooded, standing water, wetland delineated areas, really kind of a neat, interesting environmental area that if they did cluster development and conservation design around here, could have elevated walkways or a boardwalk through some of the water features. It could be an amenity, not a design obstacle. To really help create a beautiful little area back here. But conservation design would be necessary to do anything in this corner. And this is sort of located on that the eastern sort of southern part of the project. So parks and open space, again, right here, this is one of the things we want to talk about is connection to the existing trail system. And if you take a look at sort of running north and south here, especially that big comment easement, we think there's an opportunity to provide real connections there. Likewise, when Mid-Iron develops, we think there's a real connection to connect Mid-Iron through over here to Glen Eagles through that comment easement. This is the north area up by the provision up here where all the open space is, which we think would be beautiful up here on Main Street. This is a key access point to connect to the regional trail system. We think that has to be further explored and improved as development takes place. Utilize the line greenway that's running through here. Transportation is a key point as well. We want to make sure that we don't overbuild the roads. We want to keep that rural cross-section to the extent possible. Roadway design is a big, huge part of that. I can remember being here 18 years ago, they talked about putting in sidewalks on McCarthy, and that didn't go over real well because it didn't really adhere to the rural charm of the community. So private roads should be built to public standards. Developers are going to propose private roads. That's typical, but they have to be built to public standards so that they're not subpar built. So in a short period of time, they're then looking for the village to take them over. You got to avoid that. Design streets to conform to the natural topography to minimize impacts to any natural features. Sustain the overall street hierarchy. What are the regional roads, the collector roads, the local roads? And incorporate bicycle and pedestrian movement as part of any transportation system as a priority. Discourage non-local traffic cutting through the neighborhoods, obviously. Ensure safe design. Continue to improve gateways into the western growth area so people know where they're going when they come into the area and what the area is. And then consider adopting a dark sky ordinance to make sure nothing out here gets too lit up. People like the dark sky, the heavily wooded environment with forest preserve, and we want to make sure we maintain that. So here's intersection improvements that we're calling out that need to be made to make those trail connections. Some key access points that we see, as you see down here on Glen Eagle as an example, key connections coming in off of McCarthy, key connections coming in through Ludwig Farm on 131st, key connections coming in through Bell Road, through Mid-Iron as a key connector. These should all be either roadway, automobile, pedestrian, and or bicycle access. We want this to be fully integrated, again, not isolated developments. And this is talking about some of the signalized intersections that we want to have at key locations. This is an IDOT project location on 131st, the improvements that are being made along here. We just wanted to reflect that for the growth area that's taking place. Right now, this is under, I don't know what status it is by right now, but they've got a plan to improve that right now. So the transportation, some of the things, so here's a principal arterial. This is a 100-foot right-of-way. These are the sorts of the design considerations we'd like to see. The major arterials that cut through this area so they get improved as development begins to happen. We're talking here Bell Road and Archer. We would want to have treated like this. Minor arterial roads, these are roadways, not the big ones, but ones that would go into the development. This is a chance as well to sort of create a very welcoming atmosphere, but these are the design standards that we would want developers to adhere to when they were doing the minor arterial roads that would cut through. And then the collector streets within the development, there's a couple different ways they might want to treat this depending on the product. So these are the same rights of way widths, but the one on the left shows 2 lanes of traffic, one in each direction. You've got a curb and gutter here. You then have like a 10-foot parkway with street lights or trees, and then a sidewalk, 5-foot sidewalk that would be 6 to 10 feet away from the back of the curb. So the driving lanes would be 24 to 28 feet wide, and you've got the curb, you've got a 6 or a 10-foot wide parkway, and then you've got a 5-foot sidewalk. Another way to do that is in that same dimension is to have sort of a swale, open ditch and swale. These are not curb and gutter. This is just sort of a concrete ribbon to hold the asphalt in place from crumbling. You have a 24 to 28 foot wide, 2 lanes, one in each direction, and then you have a 5-foot carriage walk on one side. Carriage walks differ from sidewalks because sidewalk is buffered from the street by a parkway. Carriage walk is right up against the curb. But this would allow you to maintain that open swale, more rural cross-section. Either one of these could be provided in the same right-of-way width or construction width, and depending on the type of product we're in the development, we think this is the appropriate transition. But these are the design standards or the design considerations that we think they need to apply for every roadway built in this area. This is an example of some of the elements. This was done in Pingree Grove, sort of one of those collector streets that's just outside of a residential development. And this is what it's like as you approach that sort of collector street. So this isn't Bell, this isn't Archer. These are some of the more major roads that cut into the development to which the local roads in the development connect. But it should be very attractive, very appealing as you go through here like this. So the next steps going forward. So what we laid out here is a framework for transportation improvements and network and connectivity. And we've outlined what we think should be the approach to considering development proposals for residential and or commercial improvements. The next steps are to, once this plan is adopted, to create design guidelines. And design guidelines would be used to evaluate development proposals as they come forward for residential and commercial developments of all types. Architecture, building material orientation. So you'd have some standard review. It wouldn't dictate architecture, it wouldn't dictate building materials, but it would ensure a threshold of quality regardless of what was being done. So design guidelines. Make amendments to your existing PUD ordinance. It's changed over the years. I wrote the original one in Palos Park eons ago, but it's evolved over the years to make sure it does an appropriate job of accommodating and guiding any development here proposed in the future. We want to amend your existing PUD ordinance to tighten it up a little bit. And then take a look at the capital improvements, exaction fee review, use fee review, CIP, which is capital improvement plan update, because there's going to be some utility extensions, and infrastructure requirements for all new development. These are other areas of capital improvements and municipal codes that will have to be updated after the plan is adopted. And then review and update your subdivision regs. So these are things that we would consider to be next steps. So I know that's a lot, but again, this is similar to the comprehensive plan you have for the whole village. And the comprehensive plan you have now adopted as your official land use guide 10 years ago in 2019 said this entire area, if you look at it, it's a hatched area in your existing comprehensive plan, and it shows up in 3 areas: the residential framework plan, the commercial framework plan, and the annexation and growth strategy. And for each one of these, it says we anticipate that sometime in the future, this area will come into play. This is a future planning area. At some point, the village will have to embrace this area with a plan to govern any potential new development. Now, we're bringing you up to speed. 6 years in 20, so that was in 2009. In 2016, the village annexed these areas. So you now have an area where your existing plan says we need a plan for this area, and you now have the areas in the village without a plan. So this plan is going to guide future decision-making and help inform things as they come forward. So with that...
Okay, thank you, John. Now we'll open it up to questions with the board to John. But before we do that, Lauren, would you have the record show that Matt showed up?
Yes, Matt
Item to
arrived
list.
I made a note at 7:30.
7:30, okay.
And this will all be available on our YouTube channel, so anybody who is present at this time or for the whole hearing would be able to watch it and be brought up to speed, because we're going to be continuing the hearing and no decision will be made this evening. So the fact that he was absent for a portion of it is inconsequential.
Okay, if anybody would like to start with any questions for John from the board?
I have a couple of things that came to mind. I didn't notice in the packet, and you didn't mention, at least I don't think you mentioned tonight, and I know you don't know what definite plans would come forward from developers for housing, but are there any guidelines, rules of thumb for developments of this potential in terms of generating residents, and really what I'm asking about is kids, school-age kids? Are there any rules of thumb in that regard?
Sure there are. And there are standards that every municipality uses, and every school district uses. Although they've been revised over the years, I think they were initially developed in Naperville and get used across the country. They were Naperville tables of 80, whatever. But a lot of the product here, I would imagine, would be targeted for seniors. Not limited to seniors, but they call it age targeted. So the type of amenities, lifestyle, or housing going to be an option for them. Our other thing might be for the other end of the spectrum, the young professionals looking for a condominium or a townhouse or something like that. Every type of residential product has a different standard for the anticipated number of school children that it will generate. A single-family detached home generates more children per unit on average than does a condominium or a senior cottage villa or a townhouse. So depending on what the proposed developer is proposing, they would have to show the anticipated number of school children being that would be increased by what they were proposing at the time, and the school district would have to look at that and evaluate it based on potential impact. But every type of product, and again, single-family detached has the most, apartments or condominiums have the least, seniors, anything, senior villas, duplex villas, cottages, things like that have almost no children. So it would likely be your single-family detached, and if you had some duplex or townhouses, you might have some, but even then, not very many. So it'd mostly be your single-family.
I know this is the village we're talking about, not the school district, but I'm obviously just wondering about the impact on, primarily on our local elementary school district. Obviously, 230 would be, they're both going to be concerned, they're both going to be doing their own calculations, I assume.
Absolutely.
Would you anticipate, or do you even know, current capacities for either the elementary or District 230, and to know what impact this is likely to have on those?
I don't.
Although that's not our responsibility, I
Right,
understand.
but it's a fair question, because the impact, it could be, it's going to exist. The more variable your product is away from just single family, the lesser the impact will be on the school districts. And that is offset by the increased taxes that are going to the school district because of the product. So you could have a senior development, duplexes, cottage villas, townhouses on the golf course, things like that, all generating taxes to go to the school district with zero impact of no kids. So the most number of kids you would likely see would be from the single-family product. What that number is until someone proposes it, and when they propose it, this isn't going to get built in 5 years. This is decades. And you just don't know the product mix at the time until it's proposed, and you don't know what the impact has at the time of the school capacity. We may be talking something like a proposed 18 years from now. So I don't know. But that's the general range of high impact to low impact.
If I might add, these schools, the school districts that serve this would be the Lamont school districts. Mayor and I have had numerous conversations, and we continue to have conversations with the board presidents and superintendents of these schools. We are sharing our plans with them. We are sharing our economic analysis with them. The tables that have been built will estimate impact to them, but they're very aware of our movement towards development in this area and how it may impact them. We're concerned with them, and we'll provide them as much information as we can.
And I can give you an example of like a residential, we would expect to see some here, I think some senior development. In the town I'm from, 20 minutes from here, a 125 unit senior development was put in. Zero impact to the school district, generates on average, anticipated to be just about $400,000 a year to the school district. So, and again, it's one building, it's one building. So again, it really depends on what's being proposed. Some could be big net wins or gains of the school district, and others might not be as much because they're generating kids as well as taxes. So you just don't know.
And the village has also codified or adopted regulations to collect exaction fees, or some towns call them impact fees, for each new residential unit. So that goes towards schools, parks, library, and transportation roadway improvements. And those are collected at the time of building permit for each new unit. And so one of the recommendations of the plan is to evaluate those and make sure that they've kept pace with the market trends for land values that are used to base those fees off of.
Any further questions from this side?
In your economic analysis for the office use, you're saying across the study area there's demand for about 5,000 square foot a year. That study area is those 7 or 8 suburbs combined.
Right.
So I mean that's essentially no demand.
It's not much. Again, it's not much. And the office market is very high ebbs and flows. Stronger here than other parts of the region, but still not strong. It'll likely be a component of anything that's built, but it likely wouldn't be a singular development devoted to that.
But yet a fairly big part of the plan's office use, right?
No, there's only one potential what we call a business park, and I wouldn't classify that as just office. There's 2 different areas that could have office in it, but are retail, commercial, maybe some office.
I was talking about the office.
Yeah, and again, that's just an area where it's not a solid industrial park color. It's striped yellow and purple.
So it could go either way.
It could go either way, and it's a proposal. And I think it's an opportunity, and it may not be that whole triangle goes one or the other. Maybe it's a mix.
Okay.
But it's an area designated for access and proximity that we think could easily accommodate a business park. But a lot of business park isn't straight office per se. It's a one-off, a blip of the economic or the market trend.
Sure.
And when you look at office space, you're not looking at a business park type of use. You're looking at straight up office. So it's a little bit of an anomaly. And so that's why we know that's sort of a flex space. It could go either way.
Okay. I didn't understand it was flexible.
Yeah.
That's the land that's on the east side of
Archer.
Archer,
Yes.
where they park cars when they have tournaments and stuff right now, right?
Yes.
Is it the big open expanse
I'll
out
show
there?
you. So it's that stripe, it's this area.
Yeah, I see it.
And so the reason everything else is a solid color in terms of land use, this is golf course striping up here. But this is an area which we show it as either, it could be residential, it could be an office park, we don't know. But if the village was able to go out and sort of court an office use or a business park, research park developer there, it'd be fantastic. We think if something was like that, it could go in here and not disrupt the flow of all the other designated development we would anticipate.
And then while you have this map up, letter A there's land that's not in the village between that retail
That is
and
correct.
the street.
That is correct.
So how feasible is retail that's not on the street?
It is depending on what goes in between that and Archer. So we would have to take a look at that and see what that would be. If not, that could be flexed for a mixed residential product. But we anticipate, because of the narrowness of the area that was fronting Archer, that it would likely to get any viable commercial debt would have to be a joint agreement that would go further back. So
You're anticipating a future desire for that.
Absolutely, and the reason why is because a lot of corridor commercial, the biggest hindrance to any corridor commercial is the depth of that. And we know that if you don't look at A, but just the area between Archer and A that's in the village, it's pretty limited. And developers are pretty good, and they're also sandwiched, that little strip is sandwiched between two existing residential pockets. So the owner of that little strip out of the village is very enticed, you should say.
Incentivized to join.
Correct. So we would anticipate the part where A is to be a commercial folding with the frontage on Archer.
What's the depth of that from the street?
Don't know off the top of it. I have to go back and double check. I don't know.
And then just one final question. Obviously, you're familiar with our zoning ordinance. It's not super friendly to multifamily development, but to
Correct.
propose a bunch of it, I mean, we would have to pretty significantly amend or adjust our ordinance to allow for a lot of this? Is that accurate?
Well, again, everything here, nothing in here would be proposed as straight zoning.
Unless it went through a PUD and
It
handled through that.
it has to go, everything here would be going through a PUD. So one of the things we recommended as the next step is to go through and tighten up your PUD ordinance to make sure it provides the restrictions, flexibility, and guidance needed to make sure anything that did come in as a single-family attached or multifamily or mixed use was what it should be. But that's why we want to take a hard look at anything here, small, big piece, whatever, would all be through PUD, so not straight zoning.
If I could go back to the question on the business park, you're right, Commissioner DeBoer, the market analysis does not support a significant development of business park, office, light industrial, light manufacturing. The unique thing about this property is that it is one of the largest land holdings by a single owner in this portion of the Chicago metropolitan region. And that could make it extremely desirable to a developer that's looking to develop a large area of land because they don't have to go out and assemble it. So that's the opportunity that we were looking at with this particular area. We didn't want to turn our backs on the ability to consider that.
I was just curious, I didn't realize that it was both.
Yeah.
And that's why we say this is an area so that could be business park as well as residential. But Lauren's right. The fact that it's under unified ownership and single ownership right now makes it a lot easier. Land assembly is not easy. It's one of the biggest hindrances to development. If you're looking at a business park, you need land. And this is a great potential for that.
So what, are there any considerations in, I didn't see any regarding Bell Road. Bell Road is already a pretty big nightmare during rush hour.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so we're not proposing that improvements because it's not in the city's jurisdiction. This would be improvements through this for Belleville. None is proposed at this time. We did put in place, so if improvements were to be proposed down the road, the geometry and cross-sections, what we think those improvements ought to be. So if something is proposed and the capital budget exists to make that happen by the jurisdictional control over Bell Road, we will have a sense of what it is we would like to see developed. We can get out in front
Is
of
that
it.
a county road?
That would be state.
Yeah.
Bell Road is state. This area, Bell Road, has been designated by IDOT back in the 90s as a strategic regional arterial, which means it should have funding priority.
Yeah, SRAs have priority funding, they have stricter access management regulations for IDOT in between intersections, between driveways, between traffic control mechanisms. But designated SRAs are prioritized for state funding. This is one of those. So we're just getting out in front saying if this gets improved, we know the standards to which we would like to see it improved because it's in the plan.
John?
And we did, the standard that we put in our plan is actually a little bit different than the standard that the state has in their plan for Bell Road. We want to ensure that that the state develops that road with a bike path in accordance with our bike plan. So we
Right.
put that within the cross-section for Bell Road. So any development that comes through, they're going to have to go to the state for approval for access to Bell Road for the modification of their access, and the state will evaluate the traffic impacts on Bell Road and determine the improvements that are necessary for that development to be approved.
So you can see in our design criteria for principal arterials, which would be Bell and McCarthy, you can see that we've got the two-lane traffics on either side of the landscape median with a minimum 17-foot parkway, if you will, on either side of the back of curb. And then on at least one side would be an 8 to 10 foot wide bike path separated from the arterial. And that's the design we would like to see take place if and when Bell Road gets approved by the state.
John, as I understand it, getting back to Cog Hill, they have 4 golf courses. They're going to actually propose to lose 2 golf courses to the south of the clubhouse and keep the 2 to the north.
Yeah, let me go over.
I don't think that was really made clear that we're still going to have a major golf course here.
Right, and I apologize if I blew through that. Again, we met several times with the property owners throughout the courses to get an idea of, again, it's their property, trying to get a handle for what they have in mind. Glen Eagle would not have a golf course component going forward. Cog Hill very much would. Cog Hill wants to introduce, again, that real nice pedestrian, high-end shopping, dining, entertainment district sort of in the middle. They want to introduce some residential product as part of their thing, but they want to first and foremost be a premier national golf resort destination. So if I glossed over that, I apologize. They are keeping the best course areas that they have. Again, they haven't proposed this yet, this is just their thinking. But they very much want to keep the very best of what they have from the golfing, get rid of the ones that aren't as good area, bring in residential for there. But this is all going to be around a prioritized nucleus of a national golf resort destination. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think that came out
And I
before.
apologize, that's the driver for what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's important to flag out to everybody.
Yes.
Okay. I have a few other questions or concerns. When you bring up senior housing, how important that is, I think about medical support for the senior housing. Yeah, I know in the last 10, 15 years, the only thing the hottest item for reconstruction was hospitals. I think every hospital in the area is rebuilt from the ground up. But with senior housing, you need more and more doctors and facilities for these folks. And you talked about the senior housing, but what about medical provisions from doctors and
Right.
support facilities?
Right. So I think, again, you probably wouldn't have enough depth or area on the Archer site, but where Mid-Iron is, that could, more than big enough to accommodate a fairly substantial medical facility. It wasn't a full-blown hospital, probably not, but a legit big-time medical facility. And the Office Research Park is also a place, that triangle area, that doesn't have to be just a business park.
Yeah.
That could very well be a great medical facility. And this is why, and Ed, you bring up an excellent point, this is why we don't know right now exactly what is going to be proposed. But if somebody were to come in and say, hey, I don't want to build a business park there, but I've got a great medical facility that would be fantastic, you can say, that's in keeping with what we're trying to accomplish here. It's a supportive use, it's what we like. It's not a business park, but this is to help guide decisions, not dictate them. So I think there's a few places something like that could go.
Sometimes it would help if you pull back and show more what's going on. Like at 143rd at Bell, Holy Cross has got a major facility now.
Right.
Plus there's a senior home right next to that.
Right.
And they're popping up all over. Of course, in Phillips Park, we have a senior home too on LaGrange Road. But I know on Archer, was it Archer that has them? But there's several facilities in the area.
I wouldn't even go so far as to say, and we can chat over this with staff, that's the whole area if you want to look at it.
Okay.
I think this is probably a significant enough point to put that in the document, that the village would be open to an appropriate location, the inclusion of a medical officer, medical facility, blah, blah, blah. Because I think that's a very, very good point. If we go out to the extent of saying this would be an appropriate location for a business park, I don't think it'd be a big reach to go out to say we would be amenable to and open to the idea of a medical facility or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good idea.
I don't think the state would allow any more beds.
Right.
They're very reluctant to do it now. And with Palos Hospital being at our east side, and I know that you really have to go to Joliet for Holy Cross for the next one, or up to Downers Grove. I think there's kind of a vacuum in here.
But, so yeah, you're right, but I think that's worth mentioning. It's a real good point.
Okay. Other issues that come to me, and this is from the public side. Fire protection it doesn't change. Lamont Fire Protection District handles their area. Palos Fire Protection handles their area. There's no change with any of this. Correct? Our police department would be going out, of course, farther. We'd be taking
We're already there.
in this area?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing I'm thinking about is extending our water system and a sewer system. I'm thinking for the water system, we should have land for a tower. They're going to need water out there. We probably should have some public space devoted to that. Also, our Public Works garage is on the other side of the village. They probably need another place, facility out here because it's miles away, and if you have a snowstorm, you want to get to your plows easily. I'm thinking that maybe we do need some dedicated public lands for some of these issues, services, I'm sorry. But I think, and of course, out here, moving on, the library handles this now. Our library handles them, not Lamont. Okay. I think that's all I can think of right now.
And I think, and again, I can work with staff and Public Works and others on this, but I think some sort of mention, and it's in the plan, but maybe we can take a look at how it's worded. Again, the presentation just touches on the plan very briefly, but something along the lines of as or if village amenities or services or facilities are needed to accommodate development as it comes online, the village should be in a position to work with developers to set aside land necessary to blah, blah, blah. I think that should be in the document. That should be.
I agree, but I think we also were in discussions that as one of the recommendations, we should have a facilities plan developed for expansion of village facilities, such as the public works and the police and
Which is why for this plan, I wouldn't want to designate an area for that,
No.
but I want to plant the seed of the need for that to take place.
Another thing that comes to mind is just transportation, railroad transportation for commuters that want to work downtown. They actually would go to Lamont when that'd be the closest they really want to come
Right.
to our station. So I think that's important to flag out too. If you're going to live here and you want to work downtown, how close are you to the nearest train station? And the Heritage Corridor is probably it's a lot weaker than ours, than the Southwest service, but maybe it'd be improved.
Well, you put a do-right donuts in your train station, maybe get some more people
Yeah.
commute out of that.
There's only 3 trains in the morning and 2
Yeah.
coming back.
The Southwest service line is not it's not the heaviest service line, it's also not always necessarily the most reliable service line. I mean, yeah, you're right.
Sure. Okay, are there any more questions from the board for John? At this point, then, we would ask the audience if you would like to have any questions for John to actually sign in and swear in.
if anybody wants to ask questions or make a statement. You should stand up, raise your right hand.
Lauren will swear you in.
Oh. Everybody?
Okay, we got 4
Okay, so
people.
when you approach the podium, please make sure that you say your name clearly and spell your last name for the record. And do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth this evening? Yes. Thank you. Okay, so you can take a line up at the podium or one by one go up.
Rick, can you move the podium up?
Sure. Can you hold on 1 second, please? Make sure we capture all this.
First of all, yes, my name is Nancy Miller, just as you can spell M-I-L-L-E-R. I speak for myself and my husband, Ralph Miller. M-I-L-L-E-R. I've been a resident of Palos Park and a homeowner for over 40 years. We moved out here from Chicago, the south side of Chicago, my husband and we bought an acre of land and we built our home on an acre of land. We raised 4 children out here. During the time that we lived, we planted at least 100 trees on our property. My children loved growing up out here. It was a wonderful place to grow up. We didn't have planned parks where we lived. Just so you have an idea of where I live. I live near Wolf and 123rd McCarthy. Just a little bit east of there. Pheasant Woods, although we like to call it Peasant Woods sometimes because the H comes off the sign. But anyway, so we've lived out here for 40 years. My children are gone. My husband and I are seniors. Okay. So we're looking at what we want to do with the rest of our lives. At this point, we're going to stay right where we are because we like the 1 acre of land. We like cutting our grass. We like taking care our property and being stewards of our property. We continue to live here because we are among like-minded people who enjoy this rather than congested developments or cluster developments, and we like the green space. Yes, it is expensive to live out here. We pay the taxes, we pay the things that we have to do to keep our property the way it is, but we feel that it's worth it. When we can no longer take care of our home, we do not expect to find housing that is smaller and closer together here in Palos Park. We're those seniors that we don't plan to stay here in Palos Park and have this senior development. The community should remain 1-acre zoning and beautiful large lots for families to enjoy, not for seniors to live out their final years. When planning for the development of the recently annexed western sector, it should be done in such a manner that reflects the rest of Palos Park, not a mixture of mixed-density housing and commercial strips. There are many adjacent communities that contain that type of development for those who are interested in it. Don't change Palos Park into something that it is not, or I don't personally want it to become. We talked about high-density development, and I don't know if any of you remember, again, we've been out here 40-plus years. There was a development called Cherry Cliff Woods. The developer came in and wanted to build higher-density housing just to the east of us. It would be 104th Avenue and 125th. And people didn't want it. People did not want that kind of development. And we went and we protested. When I say we, I represent myself as part of an organization called the Palos Orland Conservation Committee. And we worked very hard to deny that builder the high-density building that he wanted to build. We were successful. There's now 1-acre building in what is called Cherry Cliff Woods. So we worked very hard to make that happen. I don't want to age in place. And that sounds kind of neat, you want to age in place. I don't want it. This is a community for families to grow up and enjoy the open space. It's not really a community for seniors. And yes, I am a senior. I'm 75 years old. I'm a senior. I don't want to live here as a senior and have this housing that has all these services. This is a community for families to grow up in, to have open space. It's also a community where people can buy an acre of land and then build their home. It doesn't have to be a planned unit development all the time. We live in, it's called Pheasant Woods, and every house is different. Everybody bought their land and built their own house. And I think there's a real need for people to have housing like that. I address you back to the 2009 plan, which says, and I quote, preserve the high-quality, low-density character of the village. That was in the 2009 master plan. And I think we should do that with the western sector as well. People like to take care of their own land, and we're stewards of their own land. The reason these the golf courses wanted to be part of Palos Park is that they didn't want to be part of Lamont that has more dense housing. They wanted to be part of Palos Park that has 1-acre zoning. So there's a reason those developers didn't want to be part of Lamont or other. We don't want to be another Orland Park. We want to be Palos Park. And I think the Plan Commission and your master plan should reflect what the residents of Palos Park want. So that's my personal opinion. Lived here for a long time. My kids love it here, although they don't live here now because they can't afford to live here. Okay, they just didn't have the money that we did. And again, we're school teachers, so it's not like we're these really wealthy people. They love coming back here. They love it as it is. So again, I represent not only myself and my husband and my family, but the Palos Orland Conservation Committee that has worked very, very hard to keep Palos Park as it is. So I don't know if anyone has any questions for me. I'm not an expert. I was a math professor, so I'm not a builder at all, but those are my opinions and what I think. So if anyone has anything,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
Thank you. Would the next person like to get up?
I guess I am.
Please identify your name and spell your last name for us.
I will. I'm Jeanette Tavares, Dauvaras. I am not part of Hills Park. However, I really like big plans, but I think you're all familiar with zoning and how these developments have to fit in with what's there already. And what I would like to address is the farm and the area that you show a subdivision to the west of that was not part of the annexation, so it hasn't been annexed, and I'd like to know how you are going to get that property in order to include it. Are you planning on annexing it into Hillis Park? Or,
Is that your only question, concern right now? We could address that after everybody else speaks, okay?
I'll address the rest of it.
Okay.
Right across the street, right across from 131st Street, that whole area are 1 acre lots, 3/4 acre lots, 2/3 acre lots, with single-family homes on them that usually have upwards of 3,000 square feet. They're beautiful homes, and everybody there is called Fox Point. It's a whole subdivision that goes back. They're all single-family. I am aware of when the farm first came in and wanted to develop the property before they wanted to put up a 40-foot high wall that was going to have multifamily in there with an alley in the back of it. And those homes across the street would be looking directly at that brick wall, plus a few single-family lots that they included, and there were townhomes, whatever. But it did not fit into the area. It was much too dense. And I would not like to see it develop that way now, because it would not fit into the neighborhood. That area there goes a little further, and I happen to live on Derby, about 131st and Derby. Okay? And I have an acre lot. I have trees. I love my backyard as natural as possible. But when these developers come in and they put in these high density, there's 200 homes on 131 acres that was at one time a farm. And after that one, that was the highest density in that area. And we fought it, that type of development for 20 years. And then, unfortunately, we got a couple of mayors in there that didn't agree with that. And that's what we ended up with. Let's face it, it's what it's all about is money. How much the owner of that property can get out of it. That's what it's about. That's what multifamily is about. That's what, whatever you can think of, that's what it's about. It's all depends upon how much they can get for their property. And I don't see anybody going in there with multifamily because of the area around there. In back of there is also Ruffle Feathers, which is a gated community on golf course. And again, that would not fit in there at all. So I understand your plans, but I think you have to take into consideration what is there already. All right? And let's face it, that was not the plan to begin with. So, do you have any questions for me? I'm 75 years old too, and I intend to stay in my house, and I was cutting my grass up until about 2 years ago.
Okay. Thank you very much for your concerns. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
I also am a past homeowners president of that subdivision that's east of the Ludwig Farm, Foxville Estates, that Mrs. Tavares was just speaking about. Those are 1 acre lots, and so, you know, I'm concerned about that area too. I have neighbors that have been calling and wondering about maybe forced annexation now from being Lamont Township to maybe, and I'm not sure why you would want that area, because the area is all developed, you know, it's already developed, but it's not vacant land. But is there any intent to annex the property east of the Ludwig, or west of the Ludwig Farm? That's one question. Another question I have is, what is this term in planning now, affordable housing? What does that mean when I've been hearing it at quite a few planning meetings, and I'm just curious, what is affordable housing? What is maybe the planner?
No, let's wait. I think there's one more person.
Okay. So that's another question I have. I mean, I think the reason, we all know the reason that we're here today, with Palos Park being in a position to develop this land to begin with. And that is because of a high-density request of the farm west of where I lived for 20 years. And we actually have a homeowners president here as well. She's not speaking, but so we all know why we're here, how this all came to be, and you know, hopefully this can, you know, this would be planned in a way that would be respectful of the people who did live there a long time. And you know, our mayor at the time when the plan first came in from Ludwig Farm, they were following what the residents wanted. They were following that administration and that mayor. They were following our comp plan. They were trying to be fair and go along with what the community wanted and what the neighbors wanted. I'm actually a past member of the Palos Conservation Organization, and you know, I want to commend you for the work you've done in this area and fighting some other things that were inappropriate for the area. But you know, I just wanted to come tonight to see what was happening in the area, and just because we are concerned for the unincorporated Vermont residents who are remaining in that area, that you are, you know, kind of hold their future of their property values in your hands, you know, by some of the decisions that you're making. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kayla. Was there another person that would like to speak? If not, then I'll close off the public commentary and have John answer the questions.
I can just quickly, you go ahead, I'll answer some of them. With regard to the unincorporated existing subdivisions, we include those in this plan because occasionally the village is approached by these unincorporated subdivisions for annexation. It has occurred in the past, and it could occur in the future, and so we want to identify those areas in the master plan to show what the intention is for those areas. And the comprehensive plan states that those areas would remain as they are single-family residential neighborhoods. So that's just in the event that we are approached. Did you have anything to add to that, Rick?
Right. We show this in the plan, not to show that the village is necessarily interested in them. The village has only responded to voluntary annexation petitions. There has never been a forced annexation, nor am I aware of any thoughts of forced annexing this area. I'm not even sure, not having studied it, legally if it could even be done, and I'm very doubtful that legally this village could force annex anything. We've operated on voluntary annexation, which in this case, should the neighborhood want to come in, it would take a minimal 51% of both the residents and the electorate of a defined area to petition the village for annexation. That's how that works. So I hope that addresses that part.
It does. It just, you know, our residents are looking at your plans on your website, and then we're getting calls from people that are very nervous because they're seeing their subdivision as part of your plan, and I just think it's a bad idea, but if that's the way it's done in the planning board, then.
Yeah, let me be clear, it's just showing your subdivision staying exactly how it is. It's just recognizing those subdivisions that already exist outside of our annexed area to show that they're not, we don't
But
anticipate.
you can understand why people looking at your website might get the wrong idea that are not familiar with planning practices.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and maybe we can try to clarify the language somewhere, something to that effect. So the intent is to show these areas to show context. There's no desire, no discussion, no recommendation, no commentary in the plan that even alludes to an inkling of a desire to annex any of that stuff or redevelop.
Because we're going to have that at my meeting next, in a couple of weeks.
Yes, right.
That'd be cool.
So again, yeah, so if we need to clarify that somewhere, we can look at that. But the intent is to provide context, not to scare anybody. So if we can shake that up better so it doesn't do that, we'll try to do that. The question about affordable housing is, boy, it's a lot packed in there. State of Illinois has an affordable housing requirement for municipalities. I don't know if anybody's aware of that. If your community doesn't have a certain percentage of affordable housing, they say you should have a plan in place to help get it. This is not that. Right? This is not an affordable housing plan. But affordable housing can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. A lot of communities are using the terminology attainable housing because it's not about, it's not subsidized, it's not sub-market, it's none of that. Okay, affordable just means, and what we showed up here, if you've got market range housing in the marketplace, you've got pretty high-end stuff, and you got some at the other end, still market-driven, but it's the more affordable market-driven. It's not Section 8, it's not federally subsidized, it's nothing like that. So I know there's a lot packed into notions of what affordable housing means. We're not proposing Section 8 housing or subsidized housing or anything like that. We're just saying to provide the ability, if someone wants to propose it, again, we're not proposing the development, we're saying that someone may come in with a mix of products. Some of that product may be affordable than other ends of the spectrum within that mix of product. That's all we're talking about. Is generally, is it more affordable or less? Not subsidized, not below market, none of that. So, and again, that's why communities are beginning to use terminology other than affordable, because people have ideas as to what that means, and state doesn't always help clarify that discussion. So, but again, the intent of this is not to have subsidized housing in the account. We're not proposing. We're just talking price point ranges within the market.
Okay, I believe you've answered all the questions. I want to point out that if anybody else wants to have any more comment, you can do this by sending a letter or email directly to Lauren. And this will become part of the public record, as I understand. And Lauren, I believe you've got your cards out there that people can pick up to get your email address. And so this is still an open discussion and input.
How long will that comment period be? Just in case.
So at the end of this meeting, we will continue the hearing to a specific date, which we haven't discussed yet, and we'll state what that date is going to be, and it'll be at least through that meeting, and depending on the outcome of that meeting, we'll either close the hearing at that meeting or continue it again. So it's going to be for a while.
And just to reiterate, there is an area of the village's homepage where you can access on the website, where you can take a look at the draft document. You can print it off. You know, it's this. You can print it off, look at it, read it, zoom in, zoom out, whatever you want. The whole thing is in here. And there's also background studies that have been done. There's sort of a planning 101 informational link that's on there as well. Talks about, identify some of the issues that we're talking about with regard to housing and cluster and conservation. And there's the market report is on there, as well as all the materials prepared for the open house and all the materials prepared for the conversation about the president. Which are both pretty heavy handed. All that materials on the website. You can take a look at it.
And I would just encourage you, if you receive questions from residents in your subdivisions that you're representing, have them call me. My name and number is on our website. You know, rather than let them, you know, the rumors fly, have them call me and I can point them to the information that's in the document that they're seeking. And then if they do have comment, encourage them to write those comments and put them in the record.
You had mentioned
Could you come up to the podium,
Are you-
please? Because you're not on mic. We can't hear you when you speak.
Did you swear in?
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
You almost got away with it.
I've been watching Schiff all afternoon, so I know the rules. The name is Greg Gilbertson, Gilbertson. I'm resident and homeowner president in Equestrian Estates. I'm also a trustee in my township. This is really more on Equestrian Estates comment. You've worked with the schools, you've discussed with the schools the potential impact on I didn't hear fire department.
We've notified them, but yeah, and they're aware of our growth efforts out here. Yeah, I've spoken with them. But yeah, we definitely will meet with them as part of this
One of my
process.
neighbors is a commissioner, and just for future planning, as it stands today, and you got a firehouse, obviously, you know where it is, right next to south of Mid-Iron, but as it is today, they don't have enough ambulances to cover the current needs of their suburbs. And if you pack in 1,000 people, so just food for thought.
Sure.
I would suggest going forward is spend a fair amount of time in fire protection.
As we indicated, one of the efforts that will follow this is a facilities planning effort and fire service would be part of that. Even though it's not a village service, we would obviously need to ensure for proper coverage and proper planning for that. So whether that's a partnership with the Willamette Fire Protection District or it's something that comes out of our individual effort.
And on a personal note, I'm offended that Equestrian Estates and everything to the east is even on
It's because it's in the 2009 plan. We weren't changing the 2009 plan.
And Nancy, do you have another concern?
One additional comment. One thing that I think needs to be addressed is if there's more dense housing to the west, the impact that's going to have on our streets to the east. I pull out onto 123rd Street, McCarthy Road. I would like to have you guess how long it takes me to pull out onto McCarthy Road. It takes forever. There are so many cars coming from the west, going to LaGrange Road, and the speed limit is such that it's more advantageous to go down 123rd Street than it is 131st, where the speed limit is 30. But I sometimes, I don't want to admit this, but sometimes I close my eyes and pull out. Because the cars do not stop. They're constantly going off of Wolf, off of Bell, east to the Grange Road. So any dense housing is going to affect the streets in our village as well. A lot.
Okay, thank you.
You can come to the
You have to come back
Is
up.
there a question? I don't know. Has that been addressed? I'll put it in the form of a question.
Well, it's part of the public record.
Of interest on traffic, and I've lived right near Bell, obviously, for 30 years. When they first opened 355, Bell Road traffic, I'll bet disappeared by 50%. And stayed that way, because everyone jump on the beautiful expressway, get I-55, wherever you're going, until they raised the tolls on the south leg. And as soon as they did it, that is the reason we have traffic in that area. So, if you want to do something and think about something constructive for traffic control that avoids major road building, get Illinois out of tolls.
Okay.
Good luck there, but Attica will be indicted anyway, so.
Okay.
Lauren, good luck with the toll thing.
Thanks, John.
Hey, John.
With regard to the traffic thing, if I can.
Sure, go on.
It's impossible to do right now predict traffic projections because they'll do modeling when development is proposed to see how much traffic is going north, south, east, west, and via what routes. One of the standards of review for a plan development is a traffic impact study has to be done as development is proposed to demonstrate the level of traffic that is going to be generated by that proposed development, to demonstrate the need that existing infrastructure that can accommodate it, and what the plan is if it's not to improve it. But one of the challenges with transportation in general is transportation issues do not respect municipal boundaries. All right, traffic is like air pollution, it goes where it's going to go. And when you cross from unincorporated to the village, to the next village, it goes where it's going to go. It's sort of like water through a sieve, it sort of makes its way out. But because you can't project that now or predict it, that's standard. One of the reasons we say we want to amend the PUD ordinance is to make sure those standards are written in such a way that the onus is on the developer at the time something is proposed to demonstrate they're adequately mitigating any concerns that arise. So that would be handled in the PUD process as a development is proposed. And the PUD ordinance will make sure that that standard is in.
I'm not sure that some of the streets can be made wider.
Some can't.
Force majeure.
Yeah, some can't because of existing right.
You're gonna find that on Bell Road.
Yeah, right.
So
So,
you have up there,
Right.
it's not gonna work without having it.
well, it's an SRA, and even as close as over by Lockport, they designated additional right-of-way acquisition for SRAs coming up from Boots Road up to, so they do it. It's a priority for the state. So, and it's also easier because typically where they run through. But you're right, in some places without right-of-way acquisition, you can't widen it to a certain extent. But those are standards that have to be reviewed at the time of development is proposed. So we'll make sure that that PUD ordinance covers those.
One of the things we do have in there is we identify the right-of-way width for Bell Road, and as property develops along Bell Road, they'll be required to set aside future right-of-way for the expansion of the road. Whether or not they're obligated to expand the road, we'll have them set aside the right-of-way.
Or the impact on roads that are already in place in the village.
Right.
Well, we have the same thing, because now you can't get on a Derby Road and Parker. It's just horrendous, the amount of traffic during the high periods.
I believe we've had testimony from everybody here, so I would ask for a motion to continue the public hearing.
Before we decide that, we need to decide the date.
Okay, well, I was going to do that during the motion, but do you want to do it before the motion is
Well,
made?
were you intending to
Well-
continue it to December or January?
Well, we need to talk about that. Is it-
I think the issue we have with the December hearing, the typical regularly scheduled date is that John Houseal is not available for that
Oh,
meeting.
is that-
So we would have to have a special meeting. And I think we tentatively identified the Tuesday before. That would be December 17th.
19th is the regular scheduled plan commission meeting. I cannot make the 19th.
Okay,
Staff and I looked at the 17th, which is the Tuesday of that week, and we also identified some dates in January if we just want to push it.
Yeah, the regular
There's no
January
rush.
16th hearing date.
January 16th works as well if we want to do that.
I could do December 17th. I don't know about everybody else on the board, or everybody's nodding their heads, or,
We can always change it. Let's
well, no, it's harder to
Well, we
change.
would have to open it, and if
We-
we're not, once we continue it to that date, we either have to open the hearing and continue the hearing, or re-advertise.
You would have to have a quorum that night.
We would have to have a quorum either way.
And the other date would be just January 16th, is the state.
I think Rick would like to
Well,
continue.
I think, I would recommend it to, if everybody's available, we seem to have a quorum, to go to the 17th, and then it can be continued into the January meeting, should the Plan Commission decide it wants to hear further testimony.
The only-
Have more questions,
Yeah,
have
the
more
only-
ideas. This still is a working draft document. It's meant to change and reflect the concerns of the Plan Commission and either your concerns or addressing the public's concerns.
Well, I'm okay with December 17th, Tuesday night. And if something goes wrong with that, we just have to have a
Well, we
a
deal with-
quorum here and
Yeah, we deal with that
continue.
with whatever way we normally deal with unexpected, disruptions in the hearings.
Okay, I guess we're all in agreement.
So 17.
So I need a motion to continue to December 17th, the public hearing for this application number PC 2019-3. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry. Someone's got to make the motion. I'm sorry.
I'll move whatever you say.
Who had the first? Okay. Second?
One of you guys, one of you guys.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Would you call the roll?
Commissioner McCarthy?
Present.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Wegley? Commissioner DeBoer?
Yes.
Commissioner Dell?
Yes.
Chair Marsden?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. That closes our public hearing.
No, it does not close the public hearing.
We continued the public hearing.
Okay, close.
It concludes that agenda item for the
Concludes the
evening.
agenda item, we move on to other agenda items. Okay. Other business, I don't think, is there anything else? Any more comment from the visitors on anything else?
I would just request that my comment about pulling out onto the street publicly be struck from the record.
Okay.
I, for one, agree.
With all that said, looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All in favor? Against? Meeting's adjourned.
All right, thank you.
Now I have a question.
Okay.